It's all part of the experience. And if there's things that are happening that are so messy, you have real guilt and shame around it and you want to make a change, beautiful. But we don't need to change. Like if I just listed 20 things, I don't need to change all 20. I can maybe choose one, like me getting triggered or overstimulated and lashing out or over consuming because I'm overstimulated. Like there's themes that might be emerging in your messy mama moments be like list, but we can't change what we don't acknowledge. And we're not going to change it if we're shaming ourselves. Hey, I'm Brooke Jean, therapist, recovering perfectionist, and struggling working mom on a mission to normalize normal. If you're an overwhelmed, high-achieving, and secretly anxious mama, struggling to balance it all and on the brink of burnout, you are in the right place. Here is where we talk about hard things like balancing work and family life, mental health, and how to navigate life-altering transitions. Nothing is too taboo here. In my conversations, I'll teach you how to let go of who you think you're supposed to be in order to create the life you've always wanted. Get ready to embrace your messy, shed the shoulds, and find freedom through a life unperfected. This is the Unperfected Pod. Hey there, welcome back to the Unperfected Pod, where we normalize normal and find freedom through a life unperfected. I am recording this episode on a Saturday morning, and you guys, you can see me live recording these on my YouTube, and you can see that this is for sure the very real life momming going on. We haven't showered. We're not wearing makeup. We have our hair up in a greasy high pony. And this is actually how we went to Target this morning. And it inspired this episode, which is actually going to be a series, which is Messy Mama Moments Be Like. And if you could see what I look like right now, this is one messy mama moment be like, right? You guys know that I am here to keep it real with you. But anyways, the mission or the intention of today's episode is to just share with you my real life shit show and list some things that are totally messy mama moments that either have happened to me or are currently happening to me. And I think I'm going to roll one of these shows about once a quarter just to keep it 100 with you all. So I hope that in sharing my life and kind of the real mom struggles and what's really going on behind the curtain helps you feel less alone, helps us remove the shame, and helps us normalize normal because that's what we're here to do, my friends. So let's kick it off. Messy mama moments be like. Your kiddo actually never not in jammies on the weekend. So we went to Target this morning. My kiddo had jammies and snow boots. And pretty much I think we're going to roll like that no matter what we got going on this weekend. I can't even remember the last time we wore regular clothes on the weekend. Snacks all day, day. Okay. How many of you have set the intention we're going to eat these healthy meals and your kids start just hassling you for snacks and really they just never stop asking? It is absolutely bizarre. And you get exhausted. You get sick and tired of hearing their little voices say, "Mommy, can I have a snack?" And you just get to the point where your pantry becomes a buffet, open style. Like feed yourself, have snacks for breakfast, have snacks for dinner, have snacks after dinner. Like, I don't give a you know what, just maybe go grab one and don't ask. Okay. This one, oh my gosh, this one carries shame, but I'm going to say it because that's what we're here to do. Getting tipsy with your kid in college in his dorm with his homies. So you guys know I have two kids. One is 19 and in college. One is 5 and in kinder. And you better believe that mama has turned up with her oldest at college because she so desperately needed a friend and something fun to do that night. Not one of my proudest moments, not going to lie. But has it happened? It has. Tablets whenevs. Of course, I set the intention that we have limited screen time and I want my kiddo to play and use her imagination because it's good for brain development. And what's also true, my friends, is we have TV time, we have tablet time, we play games on daddy's tablet. And I'm not crazy about how much, because honestly, on days when I'm depressed, I truly am just putting one foot in front of the other. And if that means we're going to have more snacks and more tablets, fucking deal with it. Okay. So easier said than done on days that mama's mental health is in prime order, but that's not every day. Another messy mama moment be like losing your shit and straight up shouting at your child to later feel so much shame, but then struggle to repair. Like there's a part of you that wants to repair, and there's another part of you that's like, motherfucker, you deserved that. You got to go back and repair. When we repair, my loves, we close that cycle. Okay. We just got to own it. It's okay. We all lose our shit sometimes. Feeling like a failure, feeling bone tired, eating, drinking, or spending too much just to cope with all of your responsibilities. Secretly plotting the murder of your partner when they can fall asleep 3 minutes after their head hits the pillow. What is up with that? What is actually up with that? I don't understand how you can be so tired and just have nothing on your mind that you can just fall asleep in 3 minutes, irregardless of what's going on in the world or in our family or in the laundry room even. Or here's my favorite, you get in a fight with your partner and they can just fall asleep while you sit and stew all night long. Like, must be nice. I think you have more that you need to worry about, honey. What's another messy mama moment? Crying in the bathroom without anyone knowing. Longing for something, but not even knowing what it is that you long for anymore. Feeling excruciatingly lonely, even though you're constantly surrounded by people. You know, one of the interesting things that I've been learning about loneliness is that it's not about being alone per se. It's about feeling really unseen or unheard or misunderstood. And I definitely think that exists for us mamas in our marriages and in our families and in our circles. It's like people know me, but do they really know me? Do they really know the level of stuff I go through internally? Do they really know my dreams and desires? Do I share that with people? Do they ask me juicy questions? Like, you can be surrounded by people all day long, but do they really know you and understand you? And if not, that leads to loneliness. Being overstimulated. This one, guys, gosh, it's this interesting thing where the more healing I've done, the more sensitive I am to everything. The more sensitive I am to energy, the more emotional I am, the more triggered I am, the more overstimulated I am. And when we start to do the healing work, we start to build awareness around our thoughts, feelings, body sensations, and energy. So oftentimes we kind of swing from one end of the pendulum to the other, where before we didn't feel anything. In fact, we may have even disassociated from our bodies. We have shut down all signs of communication. We don't notice that we're hosting trauma. We don't notice that we're having compulsive negative thoughts. We don't notice anything. We're just like in survival mode. And we start to defrost and thaw out and do the healing. And all of a sudden we notice everything. And honey, that shit is overstimulating. Overstimulating. And there's nothing wrong with you. It's actually an indicator of progress. And what I want you to know is that eventually it balances out. So if you imagine that you're swinging from one end of the pendulum to the other, eventually you're going to come back somewhere in the middle where you have the awareness, but you also have boundaries and tools to help you navigate these stressors or triggers or stimulation or whatever it is. But I run very overstimulated. Like when I get back from taking my kiddo to a kid's birthday party, I need to like sit in silence in a room and ground and resource for a little while before I can function. Or same thing if I go out in public and go like shopping, grocery shopping, anywhere that there's a lot of people and a lot of energies, I'm very sensitive to energy. So yeah, I need to come home and ground and resource. And we're going to talk a lot about boundaries and grounding and resources on the podcast. But for this episode, I want to normalize being overstimulated. And then I also want to normalize lashing out or snapping at people when you are overstimulated, right? Whether it's just a random cashier at Target or your partner or your kids or whatever. This gets labeled mom rage, but it's a lot of times it's because our nervous system has been dysregulated for so long and we are overstimulated and we don't know where else to go to ground. So we just project it and spew it out. So even as a therapist, as a mom, I struggle with that sometimes. I can snap. Just ask my husband. Hey, honey. Especially if I bottle it up for too long. No bottling it up, friends. Oh, this is a big one. When our kids straight up trigger us. I'm going to do a whole episode on why our kids trigger us because it's a real thing. It does happen. And then us moms shame and blame ourselves and feel guilt over it. But here's one that I see also, which I don't think people like to name, but if your partner tends to your child's needs more than anyone ever tended to yours as a child, ooh, honey, that's a trigger. And I definitely think that's a Gen X thing too, because the way that we were parented, our parents were a little bit more hands off. And like dads, for example, were out working. They didn't come home and play with us and get on the floor. They didn't ask us how we were feeling about things. Like dads worked their butts off. They came to our soccer game. Every once in a while, they'd wrestle with us, but they worked and they drank beer with the neighbors in the front yard after work and like showed up for things. But there was no real emotional attunement. Not for everybody. I'm speaking for myself, but I'm also seeing a trend in this. And so now, like my husband, my partner is very attuned to our daughter. They're very close. He's almost more attuned to her than I am. And sometimes it triggers me because that level of attunement, that level of protection, that level of play, that level of care is different than what I got. And I'm not blaming my parents. I'm not blaming my dad, but it is a phenomenon. And so when you are in that generation where you are tending to your kids' needs differently than yours were tended to, honey, that triggers you. And the best thing that we can do is notice when we're triggered and reparent ourselves. Give ourselves what we need to feel safe and attuned to in that moment, whether that is some breathing, a self hug, crying it out, going to somebody that you love and trust and talking about it. We're going to have an episode on reparenting. But also our kids with just their loud screeches and sounds and abrupt behaviors. And if you have a kiddo who's struggling with ADHD or is hyperactive, like they can straight up trigger our nervous system. And I want to normalize that as a mother. You can get triggered. It doesn't mean you don't like your kids. It doesn't mean you don't love your kids. It doesn't mean you're not attuning to your kids. It doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. You're a human being. And when we get triggered from a very deep and primitive part of our brain. It's not conscious. We don't think about it. We don't choose it. There's not time to choose. We just boom, the stimuli comes at us and we get triggered. We don't have a choice in the matter, but we do have a choice in responding to the triggers once they hit us. So I just want to normalize that. Our kids trigger us. My kids trigger me. My partner triggers me. How he parents my daughter triggers me. How he parented his stepson triggers me. Everything triggers me. And that's not to minimize triggers. I'm being real here. What else? Oh, this was a good one. This one's a little bit older, but when your kid says fuck at school in the second grade, and when they get coached up by their teacher, they throw you under the bus. Whoopsies. You guys will know I have a potty mouth. I don't really feel bad about it, to be honest. It's just, I've always liked to. And so sometimes I cuss in front of my children and sometimes they repeat what I say. And then I have to eat crow and then I have to own it like a big girl, but that can be hard to do as well. So that's what I have for today, my friends. Those are some of my messy mama moments. Okay, I share these things with you so maybe you can find yourself in some of them and realize you're not alone, you're not a failure, you're not doing it wrong. This is part of the experience. When we can share it with each other, we can remove the shame. We can feel less alone. We can laugh at the ridiculousness of it all. Like, your kid throwing you under the bus because they said a bad word. It's kind of funny now that I look back on it, right? It's kind of ridiculous. Snacks all day, every day, ridiculous. Like, but I don't feel any guilt about it anymore. It can just be what it is. It can be what it is. We all have things that we do behind closed doors that we are like, holy shit, we don't want anyone to know. These are certainly not the things that we're posting on Instagram, right? We are not posting on Instagram when our kids are melting down or having fruit snacks for dinner, or when we're fighting with our partner, or when our house is a disaster, or when we're crying in our closet. That's not the shit we post on Instagram. But listen, you're not alone if that's what's happening in your home. It's happening in all of our homes, just maybe different things, different strokes for different folks. But we can bring what we think is the darkness into the light, my friends. It's all part of the experience. And if there's things that are happening that are so messy, you have real guilt and shame around it, and you want to make a change, beautiful. But we don't need to change. Like, if I just listed 20 things, I don't need to change all 20. I can maybe choose one, like me getting triggered or overstimulated and lashing out, or over consuming because I'm overstimulated. Like, there's themes that might be emerging in your messy mama moments, be like list, but we can't change what we don't acknowledge. And we're not going to change it if we're shaming ourselves. We're only going to be able to drive real long-term sustainable change when we meet ourselves with grace and space and compassion. And that is why we're talking about these things. Grace, space, and compassion, friends. So I hope that this podcast made you feel a little less alone and gave you a little freedom to expose your messy mama moments. I would love for you to share them with me on Instagram. Tag me at Brooke Jean Unperfected. Let's have some fun with this, you guys. Anyways, thank you so much for being with me here today in this way. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you next week. Take care, guys. Thank you so much for listening to the Unperfected Pod. I hope this episode helped you feel a little less alone and a little more inspired to be you. If you like what we're doing here, I would so appreciate that you subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. If you do, share the episode on Instagram and tag me at Brooke Jean Unperfected to enter to win a 1-to-1 laser coaching session. Also, feel free to join me in my private Facebook community, Mommy's Mental Health Matters, where we continue the conversation. Thanks again for being here, and see you in next week's episode.